So every year at Christmas, I try to make a cookie that I've never made before. And this year, I decided to try Florentines. I used the recipe in The Joy of Cooking for Florentines cocaine, and here it is. So I start with these ingredients that you see here. They're actually pretty simple. These are dried cherries, but you can use any dried fruit that you want. We use dried cherries because it's our favorite dried fruit, and also we live in the Pacific Northwest where cherries are really big. Also really big in the Pacific Northwest are hazelnuts. In other parts of the country, and maybe the world even, hazelnuts might be harder to come by or expensive, but up here they're actually pretty affordable, and it's one of our favorite nuts, so hazelnuts. Also in the Florentines, we've got some brown sugar and some flour, which I stuck my finger in for some reason. And brown sugar, like I said, that's 1/8 cup of brown sugar and 1/4 cup of flour, by the way. Vanilla extract, honey. The exact amounts are in the video description, by the way, if you're not following the amounts of everything. Melted butter, salt, and you're also going to need for equipment a silpat or some parchment paper and a cookie sheet and a food processor. And that's really it. So you start by coating the fruit in the flour. And I'm doing everything in the food processor because it's a lot easier that way, so just a couple pulses to just coat the fruit in the flour, and this will help prevent it from sticking together in a mega Voltron clump of fruit. I had the brown sugar, the nuts, the salt, the honey, pretty much everything except the butter, and I don't measure my honey. And I decided to add nutmeg, even though it was not in the original recipe. One, to make it my own, and if you'll get in focus, nutmeg, please get in focus. There you go, nutmeg nice try. Anyway, I'm adding some freshly grated nutmeg because Christmas, and vanilla extract as well because the recipe said so. And I'm pulsing it into 1/4-inch size pieces. Now, I would have loved to have added some orange zest. I think that would have been good too, but I didn't have any. And as you can see, these chunks are still pretty big. They're still like whole cherries in there. So just keep pulsing until they're about 1/4-inch in size. And that looks about right now. So add the melted butter, all beautiful like that. And this time you pulse it into 1/8-inch size pieces. Basically, you want it to be small enough and wet enough that it will kind of adhere to itself so that you can roll it into balls, as I'm doing here. So this is where this Florentine recipe diverges from other recipes. In this one, you roll it into 1-inch balls. That part of my pinky finger is 1 inch, so that's how I measure 1 inch when I cook or sew or do other things like that. And you put the balls on a sheet and then flatten them later. So I'm spacing them 3 inches apart. That part of my middle finger is 1.5 inches, so that's how I got 3 inches, 2 of those. But yeah, with this recipe, you make balls and then you squish them. But other Florentine recipes I've seen, especially the ones without fruit in them, they have more butter in them. And then you make the balls and then they squish themselves out in the oven as you bake them. So these Florentines might be different from the ones that you're familiar with. I don't think they're wrong. I mean, The Joy of Cooking is a pretty good authority on recipes, but okay, so this part was interesting. I used the ramekin that I melted the butter in to flatten the cookies, and it wasn't doing the best job, and it stuck to the bottoms of my cookies as well. See, I'm measuring them. The Joy of Cooking said they should be The Joy of Cooking said that they should be 2.5 inches after you squish them, but it says that they should be like 3.25 inches after you bake them. And I discovered after this first batch that actually you should just squish them as flat as you can squish them because they're not really going to spread out much in the oven. This recipe is very heavy on the dried fruit, so if you're not a fan of dried fruit, don't make these probably, but I really like dried fruit, so I like them just fine, but I am curious in the future to try a variety that either has no fruit or less fruit. Because yeah, this flattening of the cookies was easily the hardest part about making them. I'd say overall they're a pretty easy cookie, but this part, I left some behind on my silpat there. And if you mess it up, the cool thing is you can just roll it into a ball again and try again. So, hey, it's forgiving. And it would have worked a lot better also if I'd put some parchment paper between the cookie dough and the ramekin. My, this is painful. So just keep squishing them and mangling them with your ramekin as you go down the cookie sheet and the silpat, and then eventually give up and turn off your camera and flatten them with your hands because that works much, much better. And yeah, as I said, this first batch, I'm putting them in the oven for 7 to 9 minutes at 350 until they're brown. This batch I didn't squish as much as I should have. The second batch I squished much better. Here I am removing them from the cookie sheet because the cookie sheet is hot and I didn't want them to cook any longer. And then here I am taking them off the Silpat because the Silpat was also kind of warm and I just wanted to cool them off and I didn't want them to get soggy as they were drying. So onto a wire rack they go. This recipe is a half recipe, by the way. I'm making half and quarter recipes of all of my cookies and candy at Christmas time because I like being able to make a variety of different things. And there's just me and my husband. So this was the second batch, and as you can see, I'm holding it up to the light. You can totally see through it, and that's what you want with Florentine cookies, apparently. Like, this is my first time ever making or eating Florentine cookies, so I'm definitely not an expert, but I do know they're supposed to be crisp, and you're supposed to be able to see through them like that. And this is a fun part. You dip them in while you coat them in melted chocolate. And that's just 2 ounces of melted bittersweet chocolate chips, and I'm just spreading them with a butter knife. And I really like the chocolate in these cookies. It really helps offset the sweetness of the cherries. And I mean, and chocolate and cherries are also a match made in heaven. Chocolate and hazelnuts are a match made in heaven. So I really like this combination of flavors in the cookie. You can also turn these into sandwich cookies. And in fact, I'm going to link in the video description another Florentine video by Food Wishes, Chef John. Much bigger channel than me. I really like his videos. Anyway, yeah, he made a Florentine cookie out of just nuts. And he spread the chocolate and then sandwiched them together. So that's something else you can do with Florentines. But this one I decided not to sandwich because they were feeling a little bit firm and a little bit like they would become chewy the next day. And I was correct, they do become chewy the next day. But they are really tasty, and I'm really glad that I made these. They are also very Christmassy to me with the nutmeg and the dried fruit and the nuts. I always eat dried fruit and nuts around Christmas time, so to me, these are very Christmassy cookies. And here they are in front of my beautiful Doug fir. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, and you should give these a try if you like dried fruit and or nuts.